Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I want to talk a little bit off the chart from the tarot. However, the tarot does on a spiritual level add us or bring us back to what I'm going to bring up today. So, I want to talk about mental health and decolonization because one of the things that helps people is to find their own identity and their own independence within a world that has said you must do this way, you must do that way. So when you think about the reasons why we look for tarot, tarot is from the tarot, and the tarot is part of the Bible, which goes back into the writings of Ethiopians, and it progresses up through Africa into the Greek and the Roman hands. So, what we find is colonization happening, and many people don't know why they can't function without something. In fact, they're functioning in doubt or in lack, but they could turn it around. And so when we use the tarot cards, what we're doing is actually encouraging people, not getting people to become dependent on the cards, giving them a message. We're actually working to give people a message of encouragement and also lead them to the kingdom within them, because there's a king and a queen within each and every one of us. But during, the colonization times, a lot of that was taken. And it does depend on where you were born, um, your language, your native origin, and so on, your ethnicity. It does. And this is not to cause a separation, but to bring a collaboration, because people in this day and time are always looking outside of themselves for help. And we, as coaches, mental health coaches, and therapists, what we do is lead people um, into thyself, know thyself. Now, this is a different type of mental health therapy and coaching from mainstream therapy. Um, some of us have develop the inner parts because we were led to by divine spirit, which is why some of us use the tarot cards, some use numerology, and some use other divining methods outside of black art. Okay. The reason why we're doing it, I want to say, from my perspective, is to lead the individual into thyself, where thyself will become strong. And in thyself becoming strong and strengthened, the depression, the anxiety, the frustration, the anger outbursts become minimal. Why? Because thyself is becoming understood, not by the world's way of understanding, but by my way of understanding. If you look at the Native Americans, they have a language that they speak, they have food preferences, they have spiritual preferences. And in mental health, what happens in the government structure is that can be limited. Now, there are states that are asking that the natives are able to practice their spiritual or their heritage, their native practices, right? But then we have the Black Americans who were brought over from Africa, or they've descended out of the colonization, and they're lost because they have no identity. They don't have a language. They don't have other than English, which is a European orchestrated English or language. They do not have their own tribal clothes as natives or Africans or even Asians. They only have the name, where they were born, and um, um, their social security number. So we have different cultures, and what happens with these different cultures that have went through mental health at greater levels of statistics, because you can look it up, losses, um, not being able to survive in this world, what happens is that as we can go back to decolonize mental health, we find that the identity has been a part of the issue. We do not embrace our identity, or we were never given a strong identity. Many people in America identify off themselves off of material gain, how they work, what they progress in concerning work, how their house and their cars look. When you take all of that away, and I said Americans, I didn't put a color on it or ethnicity, because we're all in this together. When you take all of that away, what happens is that people begin to struggle. And that brings us back to why I do tarot. I do tarot because it's a way to encourage people. It's a way to uplift a person. And it's also a way to get a person to look within themselves where they may not have looked before, because they're looking for guidance. Now, guidance is, when we look at the philosophers like Aristotle, Socrates, they were always looking at self identity. Carl Jung, he was trying to find out why people functioned and behaved the way that they do. But when a person is able to go within daily, pray, meditate, put their mind on one idea, they will begin to see that they can discipline themselves, they can focus, and then they can begin to recreate their lives. They're not distracted, they're not confused, they're not worried. They can also begin to bridge an identity for themselves that's outside, that is far from, I should say, from what they learned in the outer world. Your inner world is always going to give you your identity because it's attached to, per se, your spirituality, which gives you a foundation of hope. It gives you a foundation that all things are working together for your good. And this is where I encourage people to begin, because in this time there's secret mental health. I mean, people are depressed and we don't know it. Whenever you enter in a conversation with a person and everything is not good, you can know that that person is not well. They may not even look well, but then there's that part of you that if you're encouraged, you can encourage them. I've met people that don't want to be encouraged, they don't want hope. And that just kind of sets me aback. But I remember where I was before I started practicing my spirituality. I'm a Black woman that came from a lack environment, deprivation, um, yeah, in Michigan. I lived in the projects, where I was born in the projects. And with that being said, I'm not there anymore, but I understand the struggle of anyone that's living there. And I maintain my mental status because, depression comes into my sector, into me. And because I've lived these experiences, I feel like I have the ability to encourage others. So I never lose my foundation in Christ. That is who I am. But out of Christ, what is birthed through me is hope and glory to give to others. And if it can come through the tarot cards for you, then so be it. Because after the tarot, I have something else to offer you. I have groups that have been through what you're going through, groups that are building businesses together or learning how to build businesses. But we also bred you on believing in yourself, because if you have no one in your life that is encouraging you or telling you to believe in yourself or telling you to educate yourself and taking you to that book and telling you to read, because reading is fun for the mental state, then what happens is that you will lose grasp of reality. And reality is not in the material world, it is in the spiritual world that you are given to co create with. You are a powerful individual that has been given the ability to co create with your creator. So, am I saying this to sell you a product? I'm not. It is a day where I'm looking at mental health and the colonization of government structures. You only can teach a certain way or advise a certain way in therapy when you work with the government. But when you build a paradigm outside of the government, what you have is the ability to help people outside of the government's colonization. Now you're taking away the colonization because you're giving them back their identity. Who are you? Where were you born? Does that state who you are at this day and time? If you're 20 years old, you are not the person that you were when you were born in the ghetto. All right. So there you are right there. I take away your identity of the ghetto and tell you, well, you're not there anymore. Your identity of the ghetto is an experience to say that you don't have to be ghetto. You don't have to be. And really, we begin to look up what is ghetto, right? And then when you define what ghetto is, you say, well, I liked it then. I was good then. I took my experience, and now I'm going to use my experience to make me a greater person. And that's how life goes. It is not to stay in the colonizer's mindset, but it is to break the colonizer's mindset. And sometimes mental health within the government structure is not going to help everyone because it's not a structure that's made for minorities. All right. So you guys be blessed and have a wonderful day. Give me your thoughts, email me, and be blessed. Bye bye. Oh, share and subscribe.